My name's Emma. Today we are talking about veganism and what it is not. When it comes to choices and decisions, the ones that we make with more intention will help us create a world that we want to live in. That's what we talk about here on this channel. How can we take back the power in our life by making better choices every single day to create a world that we want to live in? Let's talk about veganism and what it is before we talk about what it is not. I'm going to read the definition. I'm also going to post the same definition down below so you can reread it. And there's multiple definitions, but I feel like this one is most inclusive of the idea of veganism. Veganism seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals. And another aside to that is that humans are terrestrial animals. So, to me, when I started learning about veganism, I really embraced the word animal and was like, well, humans are animals. We should be trying to reduce the cruelty and exploitation of humans as well, and that should be included in veganism as well, that it is not just about eating less or eating no animal products, but it is really a whole change in the way that you see the world. And to really explore the world that we live in and how much exploitation is such a big part of everything that we interact with, from entertainment to products that we buy to just the way we can move through the world. It all is centered on this idea of exploiting a certain animals, certain groups of people, and certain parts of the world. So for me, when I decided to step into understanding veganism, this was one of the things that I explored. Now, I'm going to link the Why I Went Vegan video, and in that video, you'll understand it took me about 5 years to go vegan, and it took me another 4 years to fully understand what veganism actually means and what it should include. So it took me about 10 years to get to all of these points that I'm going to talk about and understand. So hopefully you don't feel like, oh, you need to do all this at once. It really is just about learning about the world that you live in. And for me, veganism was that jumping off point. So these are some of the things that I learned that veganism is not. Being vegan does not suddenly make you an activist. Being an activist is an active choice that you have to make and decide to educate people and to have these conversations with people. It is not something that you have to do now that you want to go vegan, or you're thinking about it, or you're even like mentioning it to friends and people are like coming back at you with questions and demands. And no, that is not something that you need to explain yourself on. You do not need to prove to anyone anything. This is your choice. This is your decision. You can have a civil conversation with them if you want to. You can tell them some of the resources you looked at if you want to. This is all up to you. If you want to talk to them about it, you can. But becoming vegan doesn't suddenly make you a spokesperson for veganism. It doesn't make you an activist. It can be very simple, and you can just tell people, this is what I've decided, and leave it there. Nobody is owed an explanation, and nobody is owed any proof as to why this is a good idea. You don't have to do that. And as for the next point is, people have often said that vegans act as if they are superior or superheroes, or either vegans themselves or other people will put vegans on this pedestal that is like unreachable, unattainable, that being vegan is something that's special and not everyone can do it. And the goal of this is to prove that this is not something that is restricted to a certain group of people, that this is unattainable for the masses, that this is something that shouldn't be followed, this isn't something that should be explored or talked about. The goal of what many people are trying to do is to open up these conversations and talk to people about veganism. Talk to them about the beliefs they've had growing up and why they choose to move through the world the way that they do, and the decisions that they make in regards to things that they do every single day. And when we can start opening up and having these conversations where no one is seen as being better or less or more or anything like that, then we can actually have productive conversations, which I will talk a bit more about in my activism videos. That is coming up in a few months. We're going to spend a whole month talking about that. But you can choose to do this, but also understand that being vegan is something that you choose to do. It is not something that makes you more or makes you less than anyone else. A lot of people have said that veganism, being vegan, is a religion. It is not a religion. A lot of people will call it a philosophy, which I would say is a better way to describe it, because a philosophy is completely based off of the idea of morals, and that is what veganism really is at the heart of it, is aligning your morals to your actions through veganism. When people believe there should be less exploitation of the human and the non-human animal, that is a philosophy that they follow, so veganism becomes that philosophy. It does not make you less religious. It does not suddenly create you into a more religious person either. Religion and veganism are very tightly connected. When I was at college, the religious house, actually everything that, all the food that went in through that house had to be vegan, because that was the only way that it was accommodating to all religions. So that was a very interesting point to me, because I was like, oh wow, like they don't have any animals, like that's so forward thinking of them. And they're like, no, this is just the only thing that actually aligns with all religions combined is being vegan. So there's quite a bit of that, and I'll post a documentary down below called The Prayer for Compassion that goes into it quite a bit more, and it was a really interesting watch. So there's that aspect of it. And a lot of people, for the last point, will say vegans really love or hate animals, and that's just not the point. That is missing the point of what veganism is trying to do, and that definition of it diminishes the whole idea of what being vegan actually means. Being vegan is trying to say that these animals, human and non-human animals, are deserving a life free from oppression. Now, these animals can be oppressed for food, for entertainment, for clothing, for research, for so many different things. And all veganism is saying that this exploitation is wrong, and exploitation of the human animal, whether it be in modern day slavery or forced into working in factories or all of these different places, forcing them to live next to these factories where they're breathing in these toxic chemicals. These are all forms of exploitation of humans, human animals, and non-human animals. And the goal of veganism is to end that exploitation as often and as much as we can. And based off of the fact that we make so many choices, we actually do have a lot more power off of eliminating exploitation in the world by making better choices. Going vegan was the most intentional thing I ever did in my life. And I want to reiterate that this took me about 10 years to get to a point where this is how I truly see veganism and how I see this foundation actually existing, and that this is the point of veganism. It is not just not eating animals, although again it is a very important step and will make all of these jumping off points to all of this other information that much easier to understand when we stop interacting with animals on our plate and we can see them as living beings that deserve to be free from oppression. And that, for me, it took a long time to define my own definition of veganism, but this is also based off of what the actual definition is, and it's reducing exploitation to animals, and animals does include non-human and human animals, right? So hope you learned something out of that, and just know that wherever you are on this journey, that there's people who want to help you. You do not suddenly have to become an activist. You do not have to prove yourself to anyone. And it doesn't make you into some brand new person in the sense that we are now superheroes. No, we are just living a life that aligns with the morals that we have. And it is a journey, and there's so much more to be learned. I feel like I've only scratched the surface of learning about all of this, and the goal of life is to really continue to learn as often and as much as we can, and we can do that a lot more than we give ourselves credit for. So continue to make choices that align with what you believe, and reevaluate, why do you believe what you believe? There's so much work that we can do to help ourselves understand our place in this world and the world in itself. So Thank you for being here. I hope to see you soon, but until then, I hope you have an amazing day.